You're standing there, aren't you? The trail didn't just disappear, it packed its bags and left you for someone more competent. Your heart is doing a frantic drum solo against your ribs, and your brain, that magnificent organ that usually spends its time ranking the best fast food phrases, suddenly screaming in a language you don't understand. You look at a tree, spot a patch of damp green fuzz, and let out a sigh of relief. You think, thank God, moss only grows on the north side. Congratulations, hero. You've just signed your own death warrant with a plant. Welcome to the reality of the wilderness, a place that doesn't care about your curated Instagram feed or how many seasons of Man vs. Wild you binge-watched while eating Cheetos. Getting lost isn't just a minor inconvenience. It is the fundamental blue-chip precursor to becoming a skeletal remain found by a much smarter golden retriever 3 years from now. Most people don't starve to death. They don't get eaten by bears. They die of exposure because they spent 72 hours walking with absolute, unearned confidence in exactly the wrong direction. Today, we are stripping away the cinematic lies Hollywood fed you and replacing them with the cold, hard, biological, and physical truths found in the U.S. Army Field Manual and the Max Planck Institute. We are putting an end to the guesswork before the buzzards do it for you. Let's start with that moss compass nonsense. This is the oldest, most persistent lie in the survival handbook. You see that green fuzz and assume it's a biological needle pointing toward the magnetic pole. In reality, you are playing Russian roulette with a flora-based cylinder. Moss is a plant, not a GPS unit. It doesn't give a damn about magnetism. It cares about moisture and shade. In a dense forest, where the canopy blocks out the sun like a bureaucratic regulation, shade is a 360-degree reality. According to U.S. Army Field Manual 21 to 76, moss growth is entirely dictated by local microclimates. If you're in a damp canyon or a humid thicket, that moss is going to grow wherever it feels like, often wrapping around the entire trunk like a fuzzy green sweater. Relying on moss to find your way home is the equivalent of trying to navigate a post-apocalyptic wasteland by reading tea leaves or checking your daily horoscope. It's superstition dressed up as nature wisdom. If you want to live, ignore the biology. Stop looking at the ground and start trusting the cold, indifferent geometry of the sun and the stars. Then we have the classic follow the water downstream advice. It sounds so logical, doesn't it? Water flows to streams, streams flow to rivers, and rivers flow to cities where people sell overpriced coffee. In a movie, this is the part where the protagonist finds a picturesque waterfall and a village. In the real, rugged world, this is a lethal trap. Water follows the path of least resistance to the lowest point of gravity, which usually means it's heading straight into a steep ravine, a deadly drop-off, or a choked-off canyon where the walls are slick with moss and despair. And it's not just the terrain that wants you dead. Water feeds the most aggressive vegetation on the planet. Drainages are almost always clogged with green hell, a dense, impassable nightmare of thorns and brush that will chew through your clothes and your remaining calories. Search and rescue data is remarkably consistent. The bottom of a drainage is where they find the hikers who can't walk anymore. Unless you're navigating a flat, swampy delta, following the water is essentially taking the high-speed elevator to the most dangerous terrain on the map. The military doctrine is simple. Stay high. Get on the ridges. The high ground offers visibility for you and to anyone looking for you. A signal mirror works on a ridge. It doesn't work in a dark, suffocating ravine where you've just snapped your fibula trying to be like a movie star. If you don't want to become a tragic footnote in a ranger's report, stop looking for the easy way down. Finally, let's talk about the brightest star myth. Night falls. The panic reaches a fever pitch, and you look up at the heavens for a sign. You see a brilliant, shining beacon in the dark, and decide that must be Polaris, the North Star. You start marching toward it like a modern-day wise man. The problem? You're likely walking south. Polaris is not the brightest star in the sky. It's actually the 48th, a dim, unremarkable little speck that most city dwellers would miss entirely. The actual brightest star is Sirius. In the northern hemisphere, Sirius hangs out in the southern sky. If you chase the shiny object, you are walking 180 degrees away from safety. It's the ultimate shiny object syndrome with fatal consequences. To find the North Star, you have to ignore the flashy distractions. Find the Big Dipper. Locate the two stars on the outer edge of the cup, the pointer stars. Trace an imaginary line 5 times the distance between those two stars, and it will lead you to that faint, steady light of Polaris. It's not glamorous, it's not bright, but unlike your intuition, it's actually right. While we're debunking your childhood education, let's take a sledgehammer to the idea that the sun rises in the east. It's a nice, comforting thought, isn't it? It's technically true in a broad participation trophy kind of way, but in a survival situation, broadly true is just another way of saying missing by a mile. The sun only rises at a true 90-degree bearing exactly 2 days a year, the equinoxes. The rest of the time, you're dealing with solar azimuth, a fancy term for the sun's refusal to follow your simplified map. In the peak of summer, that sun is rising in the northeast. In the dead of winter, it's pulling a shift from the southeast. Depending on how far north you've managed to get yourself lost, that error can be as high as 40 degrees. If you're trying to reach a rescue cabin 10 miles away and you're off by 30 degrees, basic trigonometry stuff you ignored in high school to look at memes dictates that you will miss that cabin by a staggering 5 miles. You'll be 5 miles deep into a hunger-induced hallucination while the rescue team is drinking coffee in the cabin you bypassed. If you're going to use the sun, wait for solar noon. In the northern hemisphere, the sun is due south at its highest point. But even then, modern society finds a way to kill you. Daylight savings time. If you don't account for that arbitrary clock shift, solar noon is at 1 p.m., not 12. Ignore the clock, and you'll find yourself marching southeast into a watery grave instead of south toward a road. This brings us to the most insidious myth of them all. The belief that you, a sophisticated modern human, are capable of walking in a straight line. You think that because you have a sense of direction and a sturdy pair of boots, you can just pick a point and go. You're wrong. In 2009, the Max Planck Institute proved that without a fixed visual anchor, humans are biologically incapable of maintaining a straight path. They took people into the woods, blindfolded them, and watched as they walked in circles as tight as 20 meters. This isn't a lack of willpower. It's accumulated sensory motor noise. Your brain doesn't have an internal gyroscope. Without a distant point to reset your vestibular system, your body naturally drifts. You'll spend 8 hours hiking, burning 3,000 calories of your precious body fat and feeling like a conqueror, only to realize you've walked in a massive, slow curve that deposited you 500 yards from where you started. You're essentially a broken Roomba bumping into trees until your batteries die. The only cure for this biological failure is visual anchoring. You pick a distinct object-jagged rock, a dead oak, a particularly depressing-looking bush, and you walk to it. Once there, you stop and you perform backsighting. You look behind you to ensure the point you just left aligns perfectly with where you are and where you're going. It's the only way to override your broken internal compass. Here is the brutal, unvarnished truth that your favorite survival movies won't tell you. The wilderness is entirely indifferent to your existence. It doesn't care if you have a family. It doesn't care if you're the main character of your own life story. And it certainly doesn't care about your feelings. It operates on the cold laws of physics, biology, and the relentless passage of time. If you navigate by folklore and gut feelings, you are relying on luck. And in the woods, luck is a currency that runs out long before the sun goes down. If you navigate by systems, by hard science, and by established doctrine, you give yourself a fighting chance. The moment you realize the trail is gone and the trees are starting to look the same, stop. Do not take another step. Adopt the S.O.P rule. Sit, observe, plan. Take a breath and realize that your biggest enemy isn't a wolf or a cliff, it's your own desire to keep moving in the wrong direction. Survival isn't about flashy magic tricks or cinematic heroics. It's about the boring, disciplined work of conserving energy and refusing to make a bad situation worse. It is infinitely better to stay in one place and be found than to walk with absolute certainty into a hole in the ground. Stop guessing. Stay found. Stay alive.